Today we're going to talk about fast twitch training, because if you want to throw 90 miles an hour and beyond, you need to be able to move extremely quick. But here's the thing, most pitchers train themselves to move slow. They lift heavy weights in the gym, they do slow mobility exercises, never expose themselves to stuff like fast twitch training that really teaches them how to move fast. So today I'm going to show you what are the ways that we teach our athletes to move quicker, to throw harder. And this is something that we've implemented in over 50 of our athletes who have thrown 90 miles an hour and beyond. And it's something that I implemented into myself as well, to throw at 98 miles an hour at my peak. Before we get into it, if you're new here, my name is Josh Gesser, and all we talk about on this channel is throwing 90 miles an hour and beyond, because if you want to play at the Division 1 or professional level, you need to be throwing 90 miles an hour and beyond. But obviously there are no guarantees. I just share what has worked for our athletes who have thrown 90 miles an hour and beyond, and what has worked for me to throw in the mid to upper 90s. So let's get straight into this video. Now, as you can see, there's a lot we're going to cover today, from stories about how this type of training has helped guys increase pitching velocity, real case studies, some of the big reasons why you want to start incorporating this stuff, and lastly, programming and how you can start incorporating into the program as well. I'll actually give you the program that I'm currently doing as well. Now, before we get into it, like fast twitch training, right? This is a broad term. You can use this for a lot of things, but for this video and this purpose, we're going to talk about fast twitch training as in more like track style training, a lot of sprinting and plyometric type workouts, right? We're not going to get into the stuff that you can do in the weight room that can develop the fast twitch muscle fibers. We're going to stay on the side of more of the sprinting and the plyometric side, because quite honestly, that's one of the most underrated things that you can do to increase pitching velocity. And we incorporate it with all of our pitchers, but most pitchers out there don't incorporate this well, or even at all, right? They're too worried about their throwing and their lifting, and they don't really get to this. So I want to explain why this is so underrated and how it might be able to help you, right? And to start off with, right, and to see how powerful this type of training can be, there was a teammate of mine with the Texas Rangers, and he threw 100, right? And so I wanted to ask him, hey, what did you do to actually increase your pitching velocity? Because he didn't come from a big school, which means that he didn't throw very hard when he was in high school, right? He actually developed himself into a guy who's throwing upper 90s, 100. And he told me about what he actually did. And what he did was, one off season, all he would do was do track style workouts and basically try to become the quickest sprinter that he could possibly be, right? And so you'll do, a bunch of sprints, bounds, plyometrics, everything that'll help him sprint faster, right? One caveat though was that he was a big, strong guy, right? And so he didn't have to hammer strength to get to that next level. He really had to develop the speed and the rate of force development side, and he took the route of really honing in on sprinting and track style workouts over everything else, right? He pretty much just didn't even go into the weight room, and the weight room training became his sprinting side of things, right? And so I didn't ask him exactly what he did, but long story short, he became a very good sprinter, right? He became a lot quicker. He was able to move very, very quick. I think like 40-yard dash, he was, 4.6, something like that, something very, very elite, right? And so when he did that, he saw his velocity jump, right? He got that velocity bump. And, obviously he didn't go from throwing the upper 80s to the upper 90s just from that, but he credits a lot of it to that, because he did get a big bump from that. Now, there is a big lesson in this, to where if that guy had continued to do what he kept doing, which was, lift big weights and move slow, then he probably wouldn't be in Pro Bowl right now, right? He probably wouldn't have gained that pitching velocity. But because he dedicated his offseason to, what he needed to work on, which is, rate of force development, moving fast, he was actually able to get that velocity bump, because that's where he was lacking, right? You always want to think about, where am I lacking? If you're big and strong, then you probably need to learn how to move quick, right? Because in the pitching delivery, we need to move very quick, right? We do need to be strong and produce a lot of force, right? I'm not saying you don't, but you want to look at your stats, right? It's kind of like a video game. Okay, throwing, strength, explosiveness, rate of force development. There are all these stats that we can look at. What's the stat that is lagging behind the most? That's the one that you want to raise up, because then your overall rating will go up, right? I'm sure a lot of you play MLB The Show or NBA. So that's how I think about it. Look at your stats, and whatever's the lowest, we want to increase it. Because the stuff that you're good at, you're only going to get incrementally good at. For example, myself, I have outlier strength, right? I can put up a lot of weight. But, if I want to continue to improve that, it's pretty difficult because I'm already at a pretty elite level, right? Going from elite to extremely elite is a lot harder than going from I suck to average, right? That can happen really, really quickly. That's what you want to look at, especially for pitching velocity. But in terms of this, right, he attacked what he needed to work on, and then he incorporated the sprinting, the track style workouts in order to make a big velocity bump, right? And there's no direct correlation from like sprinting speed to pitching velocity, but I swear, like all the guys who can throw really, really hard, like a lot of the majority, I'm not talking about those, the mass equals gas guys, but like, the guys who can throw really hard, from what I've seen in Pro Bowl and in the big leagues, these guys can run really, really well, right? A couple examples, Shohei Ohtani obviously stealing 50 stolen bases, and, Roki Sasaki, when they did studies on him, they found that his lower body resembled that of an Olympic sprinter, right? So if he really puts on the gas with his running, he can run pretty quick. Even guys like Aroldis Chapman. Billy Hamilton in a race back in the day, who was like the quickest runner in the MLB, right? These hard throwers really know how to move quickly because a lot of the same qualities are needed to throw hard, right? With rate of force development and the neural drive and having your brain turn on your muscles extremely quickly, getting your central nervous activated extremely quickly. All of these things that are needed to run really quick, you also need to throw extremely hard. Obviously not a direct correlation, but this is just an observation. And even like a guy like Travis Bazana, right? He went from a guy, and he's a good friend of mine. He was a #1 overall pick in 2024. He's a hitter, but he was a guy who never hit for power, right? And so, rotational power and actually having some pop in his bat was a big part of it, right? And so for him, he took a whole off season to do a lot of this stuff as well. Track style workouts, just learning how to move extremely fast, a lot of sprinting. And then, he comes out the other side. Obviously, he lifted a lot and did a lot of things. That also helped him, right, develop him into a power hitter. And this is a similar concept with pitching velocity. And the reasons why, sprinting and track style workouts, plyometrics, but I want to hone in on sprinting though for this video, because sprinting is something that you really can't replicate in the weight room, right? Plyometrics, yeah, like jumps, they're all good, but man, sprinting is one of the best things, in my opinion, that you can be doing in order to just become an overall better athlete and also throw harder, right? And so obviously sprinting, yeah, it trains rate of force development, neural drive. This is stuff that we already know. But again, I really love sprinting for the reason that the sprint has things in it that you can't replicate anywhere else. For example, with every step, you're putting in like 4 to 5 times your body weight worth of force with each step, right? You can't replicate that in the weight room. You put 5 times body weight on your back, like, man, you're gonna crumble, right? That's 1,000+ pounds for me. I can't even get that up, right? But that's the amount of force that's going into every step, into the ground with every sprint and every step, right? You can't replicate that amount of force in the weight room. And also, the ground contact times are so short. It's something like 0.08 to 0.1 milliseconds that your foot hits the ground and is off the ground, right? And this is something that we can't replicate, right? Any type of plyometric, a jump, we're gonna stay on the ground for a good amount of time, right? But for sprints, we're training our body to absorb a tremendous amount of force and also create a lot of force, right? In these split seconds. And this is one of the reasons why we incorporate this with a lot of our athletes. We actually have a sprint program for each one of our athletes who train with us, because we just know that this is one of the best ways to teach you to move quick, but also it's just something that should be in every program because you can't replicate it anywhere else. One example case study is Owen, who came to us, and he was, a pretty decent athlete, but he had a lot of athleticism to be developed, right? He came to us throwing about 74 miles an hour. And, we did a lot of stuff with him, mechanical stuff, lifting stuff, and obviously, the fast twitch and a lot of the sprinting type workouts. And, he gained 14 miles an hour, right? And it was just this holistic approach that included this stuff that helped him gain so much miles an hour, right? And I've actually incorporated this into my own training as well. When I was throwing at my peak, mid to upper 90s, touching 98 miles an hour, I was an extremely good sprinter, and I would do this pretty much every day, which I won't recommend. But part of our conditioning in Pro Bowl was, you could choose what you wanted to do. And I like sprinting, so I sprinted every day, right? And I think, looking back, this was just teaching my CNS to move quickly, right? It was firing up my CNS every single day, and it was just teaching my body how to move quick, right? And this is something that I got away from a little bit, but now as I'm making a comeback into professional baseball and, trying to throw 100 miles an hour, this is something that I'm incorporating even more than the weight room stuff, right? Because like I said before, I'm an outlier strength guy, and what I need to train is the speed, power qualities. And this is one of the best ways to do it. And this leads me really nicely into my second reason why we want to be incorporating a lot of this type of workouts, the sprinting workouts, is because it just fills in the gaps, the common gaps of what most athletes miss, which is, again, they're doing the heavy lifting, they're doing the progressive overload, they're trying to get bigger and stronger, but they never work on the speed side of things, right? They're trying to get heavy and they're moving weights, heavy weights slow, but they never actually teach themselves to tap into all that strength that we've built. One analogy that might make sense to you is having a Ford F-350, right? A big truck, massive engine, right? And then you get a Porsche 911 who doesn't have as big of an engine, but it's a Porsche 911. Who's gonna win the race? Let's just say it's a pretty short race, like 40, 60 yards, right? Who's gonna win the race? Well, it's obvious that the Porsche is going to win, right? Because it can tap into that engine. It has way better acceleration than the Ford F-350, even if the Ford F-350 might have the bigger engine. And in this case, the engine is our strength, right? The strength and how strong we are is how much potential we have. Okay, so if we look at it like this, if we're this strong and we have this much strength, then it's about how much of this can we tap into, right? And this and the sprinting type workouts help you tap into this, right? Even if you have massive potential, if you can only tap into this much, right? You're gonna throw slower than the guy who has only this much strength, right? But can tap into more than what you can. These are the things that you need to start thinking about, and thinking about in your own training. Where am I lagging? Where am I not putting as much effort in, right? And back to the stat example is, where do I suck and how do I improve that? And so I'd even go as far as, in terms of the programming, right? If a guy, a general athlete, let's say a high school, college guy who's been training for a couple of years, they've been in the weight room and they're stuck in like the low 80s, right? And if we did an experiment, right, where they took all the lifting out of their daily schedule and their training, and all they did was sprint workouts instead of that, I'd even go ahead and say they would all get a velo bump, right? And obviously this is an extreme and we don't want to do this because we still need to lift, right? That's something that we need to be doing as pitchers, to continuously throw harder. But that's how important this stuff can be. And also, if you haven't been exposed to it for a long time, you're going to get a huge amount of results in a very short amount of time, right? This is something that I experienced very recently. I hadn't sprinted for a very long time, right? And so when I first started incorporating this stuff in the sprint style workouts, I just felt my body like feel way better, way more twitchy, and my velocity I didn't get a velo bump because I already throw at a pretty high level, right? I'm up to 97 this year. But I can feel myself, even when I'm throwing a little bit lighter, it's easier velocity. And it's because I can just turn on my CNS a lot better than before, to where it took a lot for me to throw, even 93, 94. It really took a lot for me to do that. Now, it's like, okay, every bullpen, I can get it up there if I want to, because I know that my CNS is good, and this stuff is training my rate of force development and my CNS. And I actually did this, which was take out weight room stuff completely. And I did this for a month just because, for myself, there were a couple things where I couldn't really get into a gym. I'm in season right now, so there were games, and I had to do a couple things, so I couldn't actually get into a gym. But right, I didn't lose any velocity, and I actually feel better by doing the sprint style workouts for a whole month. And we'll get into exactly what I did in a second. All right, so for exactly what I did in terms of what I incorporated into my program, this is similar to what some of our athletes do. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit more tailored to them. And this is something that's very, very basic. But for myself, who wasn't exposed to a lot of this type of training for a while, this is enough for me to get that stimulus, right? As you get more advanced, obviously if you're like a sprinter, then this would probably do nothing for you, right? Because it's kind of too basic, right? It's kind of like doing squat, deadlift, bench when you're a newbie versus if you're training for multiple years, right? So this is quite basic, but this is what I run through, right? And this is something that you can incorporate into your own training as well. So obviously I'll warm up, right? Get my muscles loose. Do some type of high knees, right? Making sure that my calves and my Achilles are good to go. And then I'm starting off with acceleration sprints. And this is just basically, for me, it's like 10 meters, and I'm going as quickly and I'm running it as fast as possible, right? And I'm doing about 5 of these, okay? So this is max effort. If you need to do a couple to warm up, it's all good, but this is just teaching you to accelerate. Right, you're going from dead stop to 10 meters as quickly as possible. And bonus points if you can compete with a teammate. Right, this is what we do over here in Japan. Is I'd get a teammate who's going to do the exact same workout as me, and then we'll compete against each other. And this will actually push you to put even more effort in. Right, so that's the first one, acceleration sprints. The second one is flying sprints. And I'll do about 5 of these as well. This is just training maximal speed. If you're going dead stop to 10 meters, we're really training the acceleration and the starting portion of the sprint. But now we're talking about max speed. So how quickly can you go, right? How quickly can you run? What's the max speed that you can run? Right, so basically how this works is you're going to jog and then really build up into it. You're like 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. And then you're going to run at 100% for a couple seconds and then stop, right? And you're really trying to maximize how quickly you can go during that 100% sprint. And this build up really helps you get there, right? Because it's really hard to go from a dead stop to 100% straight away. So we're having a build up that really trains how much can we push our body, how quickly can we actually run, right? So that is the second one. And then the third one is just a full sprint, is putting these together, right? This might be a lot of volume for someone who hasn't done it for a while. Like I'd probably do like 2 to 3 if you're just starting out, but we end off the sprinting with a full sprint. So it goes from acceleration to max speed, right? This will be about 30 meters, 30 to 50 meters we will do. So this, once we do that, that's our sprint portion done. And then now we're going into more of the, the plyometric type stuff. So this is pretty basic again, but we start with broad jumps, so triple broad jumps. So it's a jump, jump, jump. I really love this for the bilateral plyometrics. And then the second one is broad to a triple jump. So you're going from a broad jump and then you do a triple jump. If you look it up, you'll know what a triple jump is. But basically we're starting to get into a little bit more, single leg plyometrics, right? And then we're gonna end it off with bounds and single leg bounds, which is probably, in my opinion, the best single leg plyometric exercise that you can do, because the amount of force that's coming into your leg that you need to absorb and then propel yourself forward is a lot. And the first time I did these, like, they hurt a lot. My shin started to hurt, so I really ease into it. But for a lot of these, just do like 2 to 3 sets of these. One thing I will say though, with sprinting and plyometrics, max effort type plyometric work, it's very, very taxing on the CNS, right? So you can't be doing this every single day. You want to do them after a high intent day. That's why at the Pitch Lab we say, okay, the order of everything is, you warm up, then you do your mobility, you're throwing, then you get into your sprinting, your lifting, and everything else, right? And you're not going to sprint on days that is a rest day, right? You're only going to do it after high intent days. That's why I incorporate it into my program, and something that you can incorporate into your own program as well. Now, if you're still here and you're a pitcher who needs to gain pitching velocity, then you can actually go down below. You can send me a message on Instagram if you have any type of questions, or you can just book a call with me and we can talk about your situation and I can see if we can help. I'll see you next time.